Welcome to the Worldview Weekend Hour. I'm Brandon House. My guest today is going to be Chris Pinto. He's been with us before, and he's back again for another series of programs on the counter-reformation of the Jesuit order. We've both been doing a lot of research over the last few years, and we're now combining our research, particularly the last 12 months. We've done a lot of research, and now we're combining our research for a series of programs, the counter-reformation of the Jesuit order. Before we get to that, let me remind you, if you appreciate this broadcast and you want lots more programming like this on demand, then we invite you to join the Situation Room at situationroom.net. It's now over $8,000 in resources. We used to say $6,000. Now it's over $8,000, and it'll be $10,000 before you know it, because we're constantly adding more material into the Situation Room. It's really our VIP club. It's videos on demand, over 140 DVDs at this time. If you're watching this well into the future, then it's probably well more than that. But 140 on demand that you can watch right now. It's over 1,400 MP3s of our daily radio show, the Worldview Weekend radio broadcast, and a lot of other programs and things we have in there as well. My books are ebook format as well. You can check it out at situationroom.net, situationroom.net. If you also appreciate this broadcast, we hope you will consider supporting us either with a one-time contribution or a monthly tax-deductible contribution by visiting the website worldviewweekendfoundation.com, worldviewweekendfoundation.com. Now, if you're watching this on our free website, worldviewtube.com, then you're only going to get about 15, 20 minutes of clips here and there. We do make some clips of these interviews available just sporadically throughout the year. But if you want to watch the entire interview, because all these interviews generally are about 50 minutes to 1 hour in length. If you want to watch the entire interview, you either need to watch our national television program, which you can watch online on Monday nights. Usually it's Monday nights at worldviewweekendtv.com. Worldviewweekendtv.com. You can watch our national television program if it doesn't air in your market. You can watch it online at worldviewweekendtv.com. If you don't catch our TV program, therefore, then you need to join the Situation Room to be able to watch this interview in its entirety. Again, you can join the Situation Room for a very nominal fee of just $59.95 a year and have access to over $8,000 in resources. Again, you can join at situationroom.net. That's situationroom.net. Chris, welcome back to the Memphis, Tennessee area over from Nashville.
Well, it's exciting to be here again. I like this area.
Well, thank you. We had a great Branson Worldview Weekend a few weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah, we had an awesome time.
That was your first time to be at our Branson
Yeah.
Worldview Weekend with all those other speakers. The response was really great, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were a lot of people there. Everybody was very excited, very zealous for learning and zealous for the truth. It was a great time.
And you also have a daily national radio program, noiseofthunder.com. His program you can hear at worldviewradio.com, worldviewradio.com, or noiseofthunder.com is his website. You'll find it there as well. We had a lot of folks at our Worldview Weekend in Minneapolis that heard you speak, our Worldview Weekend in Branson, some more you'll be with us in the future, that are following your ministry now because of your national radio show, noiseofthunder.com. You've been doing that show now, what, about a year now?
Just over a year. We started it in May of 2011, so we just had our one-year anniversary a short time ago.
And I think I remember the stats after about the first 4 weeks, you were doing about 4,000 downloads a month, weren't you?
Yeah, I think that was it.
It's well higher than that now.
Yeah, it's higher than that now.
So you've acquired quite the following, and you can check out his radio show on our website, worldviewradio.com. All right, well, you've been doing a lot of research. I've been doing research. We talk about this sometimes on our radio show, and particularly when you come on my radio show. And then we've been sharing our research back and forth on the phone, emailing each other information that we both find. And we decided we'd do a series of TV programs where I present some of my information and you comment, and then in another program you'll present some of your information. So this is not your typical interview setting where I just shoot questions at Chris. This is going to be more where I present some of the things I've uncovered, and then he's going to comment. And then a couple programs from now, after we've moved through the stuff I've put together, he'll present what he's uncovered, and then I'll comment. So we're really kind of bringing our research together to share with you. And that about the proper way to put it together for folks to understand? All right, well, let's start out with the idea of the Counter-Reformation and the Jesuit order. Of course, we know the Jesuit order officially came into being around 1540 with Ignatius Loyola. But it would be accurate to say that really the idea and the concepts were going on before Ignatius, but he really just kind of formed it and really gave it some organization, didn't he?
Yeah, it said that he had formed a company of priests who were his followers and his disciples and this kind of thing, because he had saw what the reformers were doing. And what had happened at that time, if you read the book on the Jesuits by J.A. Wiley, Wiley talks about how all of the countries of Europe, which had been Catholic, or Western Europe really, which had been Catholic and devoted to the Pope, that from the time of Luther onward, in less than half a century, all but 2 of the nations of Western Europe had turned and become Protestant Reformed countries. So what ended up happening was you only had Italy and Spain who remained under papal authority. And so all the other countries of Europe had become these Reformed Protestant countries, and the Pope realized he had to do something. So there was this Spanish soldier who had been wounded in battle. His name was Ignatius Loyola, and he was very offended by the Reformers because he was a very zealous Roman Catholic. And so in 1540 he goes to the Vatican, meets with Pope Paul III, and gets a commission to found a military order in the Catholic Church whose purpose was to overturn the Protestant Reformation.
And that's why we refer to it as a counter-reformation.
Right, and that's what they called it as well. I mean, that's the historic
And that's going on to
term.
this day. I mean, here we are filming in Memphis, Tennessee in late May of 2012, and this counter-reformation is still going on today. In fact, I was talking to a former Catholic priest, a mutual friend of yours and mine. He was a Catholic priest for 22 years, Richard Bennett. And I asked him on the air, doesn't the Council of the Inquisition still exist? The office of the Inquisition still exists. It's never been closed. He verified that, yes, that office of the Inquisition in the Vatican has never been closed.
Right, and many people don't realize that the former Grand Inquisitor, the person who was the head of the Inquisition during the reign of Pope John Paul II, was Cardinal Ratzinger, who then, after John Paul II died, Cardinal Ratzinger became Pope Benedict XVI.
I think it's important you back up and say what you just said again so people really understand what you just said.
The current Pope, Pope Benedict XVI, is the former head of Rome's Great Inquisition in modern times. He was the Grand Inquisitor. And this is well known and admitted in the Catholic Church. If you go, there are even some modern websites that kind of make fun of the idea who are in favor of Pope Benedict. They say, oh yeah, he's our former Grand Inquisitor, this kind of thing. They tell jokes about it, but it's a very real office, and he held a very real position.
And again, most people don't realize, I mean, it's amazing the church history that people don't know. And I'm embarrassed of the church history I don't know after I learned something. How did I not know this, you know? But for instance, the Inquisition went on, really, as we call it today, for 605 years, but really in many respects it's never stopped. It's still going. But the as we call it, the Inquisition of the Church of Rome went on for 605 years, I believe it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I usually tell people that it went on for more than 600 years because, like you said, there's never really any point in history that you can say
It stopped.
the Inquisition ended, because in the mid-19th century, when the Italian revolutionaries went in, they go into the papal prisons in the 1850s, and they discovered that they were still torturing people in the underground Inquisition there in Rome. And you've even got writers like Charles Spurgeon who were writing about this in his magazine, The Sword and the Trowel. Then you read the book by Edmund Paris.
Do you have that?
Yeah, got
Grab
a
it.
copy of it. The Secret History of the Jesuits. And Edmund Paris, who was a French journalist, basically revealed the connections between Nazi Germany and the Vatican and the Jesuit order.
And I have my copy here. As you can
Right.
see, it's all flagged up with, I mean, and again, this book by Edmund Paris, while it's being published by someone different, it was actually written by Edmund Paris. So they shouldn't confuse maybe who's publishing it with the author, Edmund Paris, because
Right.
this was published years after he wrote it.
Years after he wrote it. And he basically reveals that World War II and the Holocaust under Hitler was a modern-day Inquisition. That's what the Holocaust was. And this seems to be the conclusion as well of a former Roman Catholic priest named Dr. L.H. Lehman. And he wrote this book during World War II, and it's called Behind the Dictators. And the whole point of the book was to reveal that the Vatican and the papacy was really behind the dictators, in particular Hitler and Mussolini.
And there's a lot of documentation in this book, the secret history of the Jesuits. It goes into how the Jesuits were definitely working, and the Church of Rome was definitely working with the Vatican. You know, Hitler was trying to build the Third Reich, and we go back and we talk about the First Reich coming into being around 800, and with Charlemagne, and that kind of became the model, correct? Or was it 600? Charlemagne.
Yeah, Charlemagne is considered the first Holy Roman Emperor. He was crowned by the Pope And so he becomes essentially the emperor over all of
Was it
Europe.
600 or 800? You remember the date?
It was in the 8th century.
8th century, okay.
So,
And so he gets the title Holy Roman Emperor there in Germany. He gets that from the Pope, from the Vatican.
Right.
And that's your First Reich.
that's the First Reich.
And then you move on to your Second Reich, which again is the same thing, different time period, same idea, same concept. The leader there in Germany getting his title from the Pope. Then Hitler tried to bring in his Third Reich. And by the way, the term Reich means empire or kingdom. The word Reich means empire or kingdom. So there was a First Reich, a Second Reich, Hitler's Third Reich. We can clearly prove the connection of the First and Second Reich to the Vatican. And the Third Reich, we can also prove the connection of Hitler's Reich to the Vatican, not only in the secret order history of the Jesuits, but what do you have there?
I've got this book. Now, this I think is a very important book. This is written by Adrian Hilton, who is part of the conservative British political party over in England, and it's called The Principality and Power of Europe. And what he writes about the whole history of the relationship between Germany and the Vatican, and how the Holy Roman Emperor was always the king of Germany. And that's why right now when they're talking about the European Union, and they're saying that Germany essentially rules the European Union, that's very significant historically, because the European Union is essentially a modernized version of trying to recreate the Holy Roman Empire.
And there is going to be a revived Holy Roman Empire, because Daniel chapter 2 speaks of this. Daniel chapter 2 speaks of this. Daniel chapter 7 speaks of this. Revelation 13, Revelation 17, all speak of this revived Roman Empire that actually becomes the revived Holy Roman Empire. And in fact, this was recently even in the news. This is coming from the express.co.uk. This is an article dated in May of 2012. EU plot to scrap Britain. This is May 4th, 2012. Here's what it says. It says that the desire to merge the jobs of President of the European Council and President of the European Commission. That's their goal, to create a super European Union president. But there are people who are not so happy about this. The article goes on to say the new bureaucrat would not be directly elected by voters. It's set to get sweeping control over the entire EU and force member countries into ever greater political and economic union. That economic union is so crucial because right now, as we're filming in May of 2012, they got a real mess over there in Europe. But CNBC had an article yesterday by an author talking about the fact that this whole mess over there may be actually manipulated on purpose to create this United States of Europe. I thought, CNBC has an article by a guy named Patrick, I think his name was Patrick Allen, saying, hey, you ever think that this whole crisis over there, this whole financial crisis, why do these guys act so calm and so laid back about what's happening as these world leaders get together and they just act so confident and laid back about it? He goes to say perhaps this entire financial crisis has been used deliberately in order to create what was the goal all along, was a United States of Europe, or a revived Europe. And so here you have this article dated May 4th, 2012 saying, hey, if you get a super European Union president, combining the jobs of the president of the European Council and the president of the European Commission, and you create this super EU president, he can force onto these countries greater economic union, because right now there are a lot of nations, particularly London, not using the euro. So if they can force them all into one currency, they're definitely giving up their sovereignty and coming together. I thought it's interesting that even CNBC has an article by a columnist saying maybe this chaos has always been the desire to get people to go where they wanted them to go with the European Union.
Yeah, people over there, I mean, I've talked to people who are from England and from, that whole part of the world, and they say that the design of the European Union from the beginning has been to ultimately force all of these nations together on behalf of Rome. And what they did is, apparently, during World War II, they used fascism. They used Mussolini in Italy, and then they used Hitler in Germany to try and force fascism upon the whole of Europe and unite Europe by force. Then that didn't work. It fell apart. Hitler loses the war. And then afterwards, they said, all right, we got to do something. So they changed their tactic, and they developed this idea of economic interdependence through the EU. And the idea was, well, if we're economically interdependent on each other, then we won't go to war again. And now it's all falling to pieces, and they've got chaos, and they've got people over in Greece who are committing suicide, literally. I mean, older people who cannot survive economically, and they're killing themselves. They've got parents that are taking their kids and dropping them off at the local Greek Orthodox church with a sign around their neck saying, "I can't take care of my kids, please take care of them for me." I mean, this is the kind of chaos that's happening right now in that part of the world.
It's sad. The article in the express.co.uk continues on saying, opponents fear the plan could create a modern-day equivalent of the European emperor envisioned by Napoleon Bonaparte, or a return to the Holy Roman Empire of Charlemagne that dominated Europe in the Dark Ages. Chris, that's very interesting, because here is a secular publication saying, hey, this idea that we're seeing, being bantered around here in May of 2012, the secular press is reporting that opponents of this are saying, hey, this could create a revived Holy Roman Empire. Not just a revived Roman Empire, which the Bible says will happen, Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, Revelation 17. There will be a revived Roman Empire. But they go so far in this secular press, the opponents in Europe are saying this might actually create a revived Holy Roman Empire. The holy part would be the dominance of the Church of Rome over this union. And we see multiple articles, if you go back in time. Here's one from October of 2003, October 31st, 2003. This is a headline, "Religion is key to protecting human life and protecting peace," Pope says to European leaders. Again, October 31st, 2003. You have the Pope John Paul II, saying, hey, if you're going to do this, you're going to be successful, religion has got to be a big part of what you're doing. Then you fast forward to another article I found. This is October of 2009, and this is Pope says Europe needs Christian values to prosper. Values Christianity fostered on the continent are what inspired the movement toward European unity and are the only guarantee of its success, the Pope said October 19th, 2009. So you have the last Pope, the current Pope, as we sit here in 2012, saying, hey, if the European Union is to succeed, it's got to be about religion. We have Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, saying what? We've got to have religion. Religion is going to be the key to globalization. He has the Tony Blair Faith Foundation to bring the religions of the world together. Right. So here you have a secular publication saying opponents fear this will create a return to not just a Roman Empire, but a Holy Roman Empire, the connection back to the Vatican.
And I believe that this is something, from my research, this is something that the Vatican and the Jesuit order in particular have been working on for at least 200 years. Because they talked about this back in 1825, in the early part of the 19th century. They talked about creating a gigantic temple into which they would force all mankind to enter. And that the way they would do it is to make themselves all things to all men. In other words, find a way to accommodate everybody's belief system.
Ecumenicalism.
Ecumenicalism. And then you find this movement through the 19th century leading up to the World Parliament of Religions in 1893, and that's when they began to pull all of these different religious groups together that beforehand had been dramatically separated by theological differences. And then, of course, this leads to Vatican Council II and the ecumenical movement that we've been overwhelmed by here in modern times.
Absolutely.